This is for John, and for you, who knew John in some way, however you knew him, and for those of you who didn't know him. I've been struggling a lot, thinking about the right words to say, or what to say, or how to say something, anything. So I apologize in advance that this will be imperfect, but it's real. I wrote some things down I just want to share. So, all weekend I salted my soup with tears, grieving for the loss of someone who was my best friend in high school, John Burden, and for the collapse of stars. Feelings of immense sorrow, memories dripping with nostalgia for memories split, equal parts watercolor and charcoal, glitter and dust. I found myself thinking I'm roller skating, only to catch myself in a shiver, look down at my feet and see a blade cutting across ice. More roller disco than figure skater. I lunge, panicked in the temperature change, catapulted into looking for pictures, letters, songs, some semblance of anchor, some familiar tune, or counter evidence for a counter narrative. Which is to say that I wish that it weren't true. I wish this were a big dramatic trick that you conjured up as an absurdist way of saying hello after too long. I wish that you were going to call me and say, "Hey, Jackie Lance, just kidding, don't hate me. I just thought if you thought I was dead, then maybe you'd try and hold a seance to talk to me, and I could show up in New York randomly speaking in tongues, throwing confetti, and you would give me shit like you used to. And then we would climb on your roof and smoke cigarettes and catch up on life's circus. Lay out, can't believe this is real life, but it is storylines like card tricks. And it would be magical, because I am the bringer of magic and shiny, and you won't believe me when I tell you what happened, but I swear it happened happenings." I wish I could get mad at you. I wish I could run into you giddy on the sidewalk, curtsy and kiss your trembling hand, and watch you pull your chin to your chest, looking up at me through coy, mischievous, fluttering eyelashes like you used to, using some impromptu character voice. The last time I spoke to you, I was living in San Francisco. It was a surprise call last year. We hadn't spoken in a while, long enough that I no longer had a number for you in my phone, but I knew it was you the second I heard your voice. You called me in the middle of the night, just like you always used to fill me in on your micro-dramas and misadventures. John, you are a masterful storyteller, because you lived a life that was story-worthy. While it wasn't always pretty and was often very risky, you taught me something early on that has influenced everything I am and that I do. That is that the theater and the poetry is not something you invent or make up out of thin air. It's the something that you manifest and you live. You want to create poetry? Then live a poetic life. Be a goddamn poem. You want to make theater? Then be theater. On the phone, we talked about that one time I fell into a deep depression as an undergraduate in college. And you drove your folks' diesel Suburban from Houston all the way to Meadville, Pennsylvania to rescue my heart. And we talked about how you succeeded, how you won. During that visit, I performed a eulogy that I had written for you. It was something that I had written for a final project for a public speaking class or something. And I thought that you would get a kick out of getting to hear your own eulogy while you were still alive and in person. Perhaps there's a kind of morbid humor in that. I acknowledge that. But I was right, and you loved it. Declaring there on the hill, faced toward the sun, with your hand over your chest as if preparing to bolt out the national anthem. My name is John, and I approve this message. In a letter after that visit, you wrote, my stories and adventures never seem lost on you. I have always had this love, to impact those around me, to be remembered and important, sort of permanent in someone's life. Your eulogy captured what I try to show to others, and lets me at least know that I've touched at least one life to the point that my life matters. You ended that same letter saying, Jackie, I just want you to know that you have it good here, kid. At times, all things suck. At least you can picture yourself looking back and getting a great story out of it. I want you to be okay. You, as well as I, need and deserve to be happy. Love the moments while you got them. John, your life did and still does matter. I wish I could make it all better for you, as you did for me many times. There are some people whose magic the world doesn't know what to do with, whose spirit sets them apart early on, and they seem to be set up from the get-go for a life of struggle. Colored sparks swimming against a current of gray matter. John was one such magical creature, irreconcilable with this reality, star strings tangled in his hair, who suffered malnourishment at the hand of a world ill-equipped to hold him. Magic can be potent, and it can render an enchanted spirit and the body that carries it vulnerable. I'm still processing everything right now, and I know I'm not the only one. The one question that keeps coming up for me when I'm thinking about John is this. How can we be better at taking care of stars? I'm tired of seeing stars collapse. I love you, John. And you will always be shiny slivers of sunlight, whispering whimsical gibberish to strangers and lovers in my irises. In honor of those who knew you and loved you, and above all in honor of you, this is the unedited Johnny B. approved eulogy that I wrote and performed for you in 2009. I'm going to share it now. I remember the first time John and I met. We were in a play together in high school. It was a pseudo-experimental version of Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream, set in the 1920s. I was Hermia, and you were Puck. You were such a little kid to me then, bouncing around during practice backstage, always caffeinated with a bottle of Coca-Cola in hand to keep you going. Little did I know that you would end up not only being someone I would share many a stage with, but you would become my truest, closest friend for the next 6 years plus, and some of the hardest, complicated times of both of our lives. Our friendship progressed out of the great amount of time we spent trying to help each other memorize lines. We became quite famous for our OG ISS BCIHLML parties, which you coined to mean, oh God, I'm so screwed because I haven't learned my lines, complete with the frantic body language, flailing arms, jittering hands, bouncing nervously up and down that you were so well known for. You would call me up and say, slow and sweetly, Jackie, baby. Yes, I would say, it's that time again. Which meant that we would lock ourselves in a room and not let each other out until each line was memorized. Then, to celebrate, we would challenge each other to say them in different accents for the hell of it. I could never suggest an accent that you couldn't do. Southern Belle, Revolutionary Russian, Little Mary Lou in school, grade 2, you rocked them all, and with finesse. You made even the most torturous of things, like learning lines, fun and worthwhile. The day of the show's opening, I remember you showed up at my house at about 2 in the morning and tapped on my window. I couldn't see anything except I heard you say, "Jackie, baby, Jack, wake up." I said, "John, is that you?" To which you responded, in the most John Burden of ways, "Thou speakest aright, I am that merry wanderer of the night." The rest of our friendship was strewn with these play references and random moonlight on a school night visits. It makes sense that I met John in theater, because I've yet to meet a more dramatic individual. John seemed to attract drama everywhere he went. I always made fun of him for this. He would call me before going out sometimes as if to prepare me for the conversation that would inevitably follow, in which he would detail everything that had gone disastrously wrong over the course of the night. I think that he called me beforehand just to hear me sing to him like Chuck Berry. "Go, Johnny, go, go, Johnny, be good." He liked to end these conversations with, "Don't worry, little mama, Johnny be good as always," which meant, I know you're going to worry anyway, so I'm just going to do whatever feels right at the moment. That's Johnny B for you. Always kept things interesting. In suit with John's dramatic personality was his incessant desire to live life with as much excitement as possible. To John, everything had the potential to be grand. Every day could be an extravaganza. It was hard to tell what was planned and what was accidental with him. He always kept me on my toes, never bored, always ready for whatever might happen next. It was John who introduced me to no-dos and cigarettes because he said life was too short to sleep. There was always so much to do, day and night. "And you gotta be awake to it all, baby," he once said. "Don't want to spend your days all mediocre mellow yellow." John smoked menthols at the time because he claimed the mint made things seem even more alive and vivid. Like I mentioned earlier, John rarely slept. In fact, I began sleeping with my cell phone under my pillow because I knew that if he called, it would be at 3 or 4 in the morning. I'm pretty sure he knows more about me, knows more of my secrets than anyone I've ever met through the hundreds of conversations I had with him while I was asleep. I also knew that if I ever needed him, no matter what time of day or night, he would rush over regardless of where he was or who he was with. John gave it all for the people that he cared about. Perhaps the most significant thing about John that's rubbed off on me and become part of who I am was not only his passion for life and the excitement that he brought to it, but his strength and bravery in the face of it. The fact that he could endure the very life as he did, maintaining such joie de vivre. John believed very wholeheartedly that no matter what, the show must go on. He brought the bumps and bruises of life into the act, incorporated them into the play, rode them out and squeezed them for all their emotion and meaning, and then used them as a basis for reflection once the scene changed. Sometimes he could have fooled me into thinking that life's obstacles were planned, that they were necessary for the lovers to eventually meet and live happily ever after. When things got too heavy, he taught me to take an intermission. Oftentimes this meant going for a long drive through the city at night, windows rolled down, blasting Total Eclipse of the Heart from the stereo and singing, screaming along with the lyrics. "I don't know what to do and I'm always in the dark." John always had answers for me when I felt lost or confused. "We're living in a powder keg and giving off sparks." He reminded me that we all live in a powder keg, in the sense that everything is always on the edge of volatile explosion, and it isn't something that should scare us or that we should avoid. Rather, we should embrace the madness of the world, the unpredictable. We should give off sparks and bring it on ourselves. He made me a CD of every cover version of that song, just in case I needed my own intermission, but didn't have him there to guide me. Everyone knew John, but at the same time it seemed that no one really knew him at all. No one ever really could. He was everything at once. Indefinable. Sometimes it was hard to tell when he was acting and when he was John. I think it's because he could never stay in one role. He had to be it all, and he was it all. He was the kind of guy that you could never fully grasp, but he would let you in close enough to a part of him, just enough to make you feel comfortable. When he spoke with you one-on-one, it was like you were the center of his universe. You were the sole member in the audience. Like he was in the spotlight, but everything he said and did was for your happiness. He would move in and out of playful, frivolous banter, catching me up on the recent gossip, or making some elaborate, sarcastic evaluation of the world and all its problems. But then there were so many moments where he would make some show-stopping remark, a comment put simply, but so poignant and honest that it took a silent pause afterwards to fully grasp. The things that came out of John's mouth seemed to constantly require a standing ovation, and I think he knew this. See, after he would make some grand statement a la teenage Confucius, he had this expression on his face, head cautiously tilted downwards, eyes looking up with raised eyebrows and a coy smile that seemed to say, "Yeah, that was good. What'd you think? What'd you think?" After which he would then pause, waiting for a response. Usually mine was, "Oh, John," in a, "Oh, you, here we go again" kind of tone. But he knew I ate it up, and thus he never stopped feeding me with it. Our Johnny B. A boy with whom a merrier hour was ne'er wasted. People used to call him the beastly burden, a joke off of his last name. He was anything but a burden on those who loved him. For as much as he took from others, time, attention, love, he gave twice as much. John, you were never a burden on me. You were and will always be my best friend, bold, brave, and beautiful. He didn't like to have his picture taken. In fact, when I left to study abroad for a year after graduation, he photocopied his driver's license and proof of Canadian citizenship so that I could have something to remember him by. Neither of them was the John I knew, of course, the first being a fuzzy, digital, America's Most Wanted 16-year-old. The second was of a pudgy, toothless infant, 9 months. I don't think I would have been satisfied with any photo of him, though. None could capture everything he was to me. But there is one image that seems to linger with me today, from the very first breaths of our friendship. I'll never forget how you looked, standing alone under a blinding spotlight on an otherwise pitch-dark stage in the very last scene of our first play together. You were barefoot, with a button-down white shirt, black knickers, red suspenders, a scruffy flat cap like an old-timey newspaper boy. You had everyone's undivided attention. If we shadows have offended, think but this, and all is mended, that you have but slumbered here, while these visions did appear, and this weak and idle theme, no more yielding but a dream. A dramatic exit as charming and enigmatic as John himself. It's a scene that repeats itself in my head even today. See, because John didn't end for me. He didn't end for any of us. Rather, he stepped back from his platform, back from his spotlight into the shadows. His curtains closed, but even death could never stop him, as his spirit lives on in each of us, in his stories. His presence is felt in the influence he's had not only on my own life, but also on the lives of others, of his friends, his family, and all those lucky enough to have brushed paths with this star child. These pieces of John in each of us continue to play out on this great stage that we light up with his memory. And in my heart, John's show will always go on.